It's Tuesday night, it's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night, it's 7 o'clock, and we are live. Welcome to Detox. I'm your host, Veronica Brockwell. So our topic tonight is the mind-body connection. Did you know that our physical health can greatly impact our mental health? So tonight our guest is going to connect the dots, and he's going to show us ways to get back our physical health and our happiness. So I'm so excited to welcome back to the Detox our favorite doctor, Michael Wild. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
You're going to make us physically well and mentally well and happy.
Well, to the best of my ability. For some of us, it may not be possible. We're really going to try our best.
Oh, I think that's awesome. So let's get started with the mind-body connection, because you're going to give us a lot of big words tonight, and I think you're just going to really have to lead the show. I will do my best.
Try not to get too deep into the neurophysiology, but I think it's important to understand what's actually happening inside, to understand how much control you have over what's happening inside. This last year and a half has been crazy, literally crazy, right? And, we hear it in the news a lot. They don't like to talk a lot about it, but we hear there's obviously a tremendous uptick in depression and suicides. And that is rooted in a lot of upheaval of people's lives, a lot of loss of community, a loss of socialization that is fundamental to human health and well-being. Yeah. And every study in sociology on survival and longevity will always tell you that the people who live the longest, healthiest lives are those who have the best social circle. Yeah. So, obviously what we eat matters. What we do with our bodies, how we function, how we feel, how we exercise matters. But what you're thinking matters much more so than what you realize to affect your health, and vice versa. What you're doing with your body, what you're eating, how you're exercising, different things that you do every day dramatically influence the development and ratio of the hormones in your brain, which we call neurotransmitters. And there are certain ones like serotonin and dopamine that are extremely important, and GABA, for maintaining a healthy, happy attitude towards life and the ability to cope. And when these things start getting interrupted, we start to lose our ability to cope, and we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's when the anxiety starts to kick in. That's when the depression starts to kick in. And that's when we sadly see people start to give up on life when they don't have to, and when there really are many things they could have done long before they're ever making that decision that I believe could really change that brain-body connection. And the reason I believe this and understand this is my background, my undergraduate work. My degree was in psychology, specifically psychophysiology, or the brain-body connection. So I started looking at that early on because I understood that there was a tremendous impact between what you think, your emotions, your biochemistry, and then your physiology. And I wanted to dig deeper into that because I understood, at least I wanted to understand more, that plays a huge role in our health and happiness over our entire lives. I thought it was also interesting when you look at studies of centenarians, people who live to be 100 or greater. And there's been many studies, and they talk about things like blue zones around the world where we see these folks. We notice they have completely different diets. Some smoke, some don't, some drink, some don't, some exercise, some don't. But the one thing, or at least one of the main things that they all have in common, is they all truly believe themselves to be happy. And that plays a huge role in your longevity. And we all have a lifespan, but within that lifespan, we want to have a health span that equals that lifespan. We don't want to live to 100 if the last 40 years were decrepit and in pain. And we also want a brain span that matches that health span, lifespan, because if you're perfectly healthy but can't remember that you were even alive, what good is that?
Right.
And we see, unfortunately, a large rise in things like dementia and Alzheimer's in recent years for many possible reasons. But we do know this, what we're going to talk about tonight, absolutely plays a role in the development of neurological and mental conditions and disorders that particularly we're going to focus on stress and anxiety tonight. And I'm going to talk to you about what simple things you can do, how you can exercise, what nutrients or herbs you could use, what external tools can you use to change how your body works and how your brain works to pull back your happiness and your health and get it back within your control.
All right, so let's get started.
All right. So where do we begin? Let's begin at the beginning, right?
Okay.
Let's go back to, for those of you who believe in evolution, and we want to talk about the development of mankind. And I was actually just up at the Museum of Natural History in DC this weekend, looking at this firsthand in front of me at the development of the human brain from early man, Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, going up through the years, Paleolithic, going all the way to modern day man, and seeing the changes in the size and the shape of the brain. And what the brain started with was a very rudimentary brain known as the limbic portion of the brain, which is based primarily on survival. There was not a lot of higher thinking, we believe, happening in that brain. It was just all about, how do I get through today, right? Mm-hmm. And so, unfortunately, how many of us today are recruiting and retreating back into that limbic brain? Just think about, how do I just get through today, right? It all becomes about survival instinct. As the human brain developed over time, we started seeing more layers, right? We had from the cerebrum, we had the cerebellum, and we started getting what's known as a cortex and a neocortex, where as we progressed, we developed a larger and larger brain with more and more function. And the majority of that function that came about was more about frontal lobe function, about decision-making, about emotions, about community. And the only way individuals survived in that time through evolution was by developing community, right? Okay. So if I had to go out and hunt, I had to trust that you, Veronica, were going to take care of my kids while I was gone. Because if I didn't go hunt and bring us all back food, we're going to starve. But if I left and you decided that you were going to eat my kids, that wasn't good either. Okay? So we had to trust each other. And trust comes about in a sense of a group that then develops community. Okay. And without community, anxiety and depression are some of the first things that we see form.
Interesting.
And I also thought it was very interesting that I was listening to a TEDx talk recently about depression and about antidepressants. And real quick, I thought this was a really cool little story how traditional Western medicine was trying to introduce the concept of chemical antidepressants to people in Cambodia. And the doctors in Cambodia said, we don't need that. We already have antidepressants. And he thought that the Western medicine doctor thought he's going to learn about a bunch of new herbs or things that were actually not new, but traditional herbs that help with depression. And the doctors there told him a real quick story. They had a worker who worked in the rice paddies. So he's underwater up to his knees most of the time. He developed an infection and ended up getting his leg amputated. And then that prosthetic he was using was getting wet and was really irritating while he was working in the rice paddies. He wanted to go back to work, but it was causing tremendous pain every day, right? And because of this pain he was in every day, he started to become depressed. The physical pain started to change his neurochemistry, and he started to become depressed. And he would often cry about the fact that he couldn't stand to do this work anymore, but he had to work. How was he going to support his family? He had to work whether he liked it or not, especially in a job that he could no longer stand. So the doctors got together and said, how can we best help cure this man's depression? Well, first and foremost, we can get him out of the water. How else is he going to feed his family? We can pull together and buy him a cow, and he can develop the cow to produce milk, and he can sell the milk, and then he can feed his family. So they did that, and within a month, he was happy and healthy again. His pain was gone. His depression was gone. So they said, so you see, doctor, we already have antidepressants. They're called cows, right? So what they were explaining was that while changing your neurochemistry can help, first and foremost, that's simply a crutch and only temporary if you don't fix some of the external factors. In this case, it was coming together as a community and helping him get out of that survival mode and into thriving and be able to be a happy person again, right? So we need to develop ourselves to go beyond that limbic brain, right? And we have a section in our brain called the amygdala that is very much involved with our stress response. So in this last year and a half, where we've been bombarded on the news over and over from our friends, from our conversations with stress in many different forms, then that amygdala kicks in, and that starts to initiate a change from your brain on down to the organs and glands in your body that produce certain hormones that get you through your survival stage. But if they maintain that, then you start crashing, right? You start going down. Yeah. So that cascade from the brain on down is called the HPA axis. And that stands for hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal axis. Okay. So your brain is surveying what's happening in the body and in the brain, looking at all the biochemical levels, and it makes a decision when it thinks that, oh no, I'm in a stressful situation. I need more stress hormone to get me through that to survive. And the adrenal glands are our primary stress hormone producers. So the hypothalamus is the president of the system, so to speak, of our endocrine system, which has over 600 hormones in it. And that hypothalamus is surveying the land and says, okay, I need more stress hormone. So the hypothalamus then triggers a response from the pituitary and gives them a nudge and says, hey, go wake up your buddy, that adrenal gland, and tell him to go make some more hormones. So that's what happens. The hypothalamus talks to the pituitary talks to the adrenals. The adrenals then kick out adrenaline, cortisol, things we need to do to get through our stressful lives. And what do these hormones do? They raise our heart rate, right? So that we get more blood pumping through the body to either fight or flee, fight or flight, right? We start to increase adrenaline, which constricts our blood vessels and forces blood pressure up. So we keep blood up in our brain. So if I have to jump around and dodge and jump up and down, the blood stays up here. It doesn't drop out and I don't pass out, right? So if I have to suddenly jump up, I need adrenaline and cortisol to get the job done.
And that's important on the short term.
Exactly.
But not
right. That's
on
called
long term, right?
Right. So that's called the alarm stage of the adrenals. It's an acute short term period. And if you're in a truly stressful situation, you need that, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So if you're really under attack, if you don't have that, you don't defend yourself, right? So yes, that's supposed to be short term. It's supposed to go up. You're supposed to address the issue, and then it's supposed to go back down. Okay. But the problem is when the stress doesn't go away, and this chronic stress day in and day out continues, or if our brain perceives that it is, right? Whether that threat's really there or not anymore, but we still have this fear about it, right? So you may be perfectly safe in your own home, but you have fear regardless, okay? So when that's happening, then that alarm stage starts to plateau and prolong, right? That's called resistance stage. Okay. And as you stay in that resistance stage, your hormones are going to start to rev up as much as they can, then they're going to plateau, then they're going to start to go down because you're burning up your gas that you're using to make it. Okay. You only have a limited supply that gets made in a certain period of time. And if you're keeping that alarm up, you're sucking that gas tank dry. And eventually you're going to run out of gas. And that's called the exhaustion phase. So when you go into the exhaustion phase of your adrenals, now you have chronic fatigue syndrome. You can't heal and repair very well. You can develop other chronic diseases of inflammation, like heart disease, diabetes, dementia, cancer. So as you prolong this and your fight or flight system is no longer working well, everything starts to crash. So you have two halves to that controlling system, right? In your nervous system, there's a part of the nervous system called the autonomic nervous system, which we also refer to as the automatic nervous system, because it controls your organs and glands. You never have to think about it. You don't think about your heart beating. You don't think about taking a breath. It happens automatically. But we also know sometimes it has to rev up, and sometimes we want it to go down. So that rev up or gas pedal is called the sympathetic nervous system. And that's the part that controls that fight or flight. And we need that sympathetic nervous system to do its job to get us through a stressful day. But once that stress is over, we need to kick back into the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the brake pedal. And that slows everything down. So sympathetic is fight or flight. Parasympathetic is rest and repair. Okay. So our healing and digestion occur in the parasympathetic state, but they can't work in the sympathetic state. Because unfortunately, you can't be in both at the same time. You can't drive a car with your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time, right? So we have to have this balance back and forth. So I use the analogy with my patients. If I'm stepping off a curb and a car is flying at me, I want my sympathetic system to kick in so I can suddenly shunt blood away from my intestines, away from my vital organs, away from my brain, and into my arms and legs. So I don't think, I react, and I jump out of the way. That's what we want to do. Now, if it should happen that as I jump out of the way, I fly back and smack my head off the curb, now I need to heal and repair. So I want my parasympathetic system to kick in. And that's where my body is going to bring the blood back to the areas that need the wound healing. And it's going to calm down my adrenaline and calm down my heart rate and my cortisol so that my body can redirect things like my blood sugar to feed the cells that have to heal, to bring in the chemistry of healing and repair. And that can only happen once the parasympathetic system is turned on. Okay? So we need this seesaw, this delicate balance, and we need the ability to shift from one to the other. When you're overly stressed for good reason, but it's prolonged, your foot gets stuck on the gas pedal and you don't heal and repair, rest and digest real well. So digestion gets screwed up. We see constipation and diarrhea, indigestion, heartburn, bloating. You can't sleep anymore, right? You can't fall asleep. You can't stay asleep. You keep kicking up out of sleep, usually between 1 and 3 a.m. You wake up and you have to go pee and you can't get back to sleep and it keeps happening. That's a sympathetic adrenal gland stress response. Okay. So what I do in my practice and what I've learned over the years is how can I help people modulate this response so they are more in that middle range, so they can go which way they need to go when they need to go that way and not stuck in one and not stuck in the other. Right. And what we're going to talk about in tonight's episode is what can we do about that?
Right.
Right. Because when you do things to affect that physiology, what happens? The hormones change, and the hormones in your brain, the neurotransmitters change. And you start to upregulate your serotonin, okay? Your happy anti-anxiety hormone. And that is what actually changes your mind, okay? So if you change your body, you can change your mind. And if you change your mind, you can change your body.
All right. So let's get started of how we can do just that.
Okay. So there is a field of study, one that I enjoy a lot of. Probably most of you do. It's called psychoneuroendocrinology. Everyone probably reads that Journal of Psychoneuroendocrinology on a regular basis like I do.
Oh, yes, I do. Of course I do.
So what this means is hyphenated words.
I hope I spelled it correctly.
I think you did. It looks pretty good to me.
We'll find out. We'll find out.
So what this big word means is that there is a balance and interplay between your psychology, your psyche, your neurology, your nervous system, and your endocrinology, which is your hormone system. Okay. And each one affects the other. Anything you do to affect your hormones will eventually affect your nervous system and your psychology. Anything you do to affect your nervous system will eventually affect your psychology and your hormones. And anything you do to affect your psychology will affect your nervous system and your hormones. Okay. And as a chiropractor, a doctor of chiropractic, chiropractors are recognized for over 200 years that when you affect the spine and the nervous system, you dramatically affect the hormone balance of the body and the psychology of the body. I'll never forget, I had one woman who would come to me on a fairly regular basis. Then I started seeing her less and less often. And when I did see her, she was obviously off. She was depressed. She was anxious. I tried to talk to her a couple times about it, but she wasn't really open to talking about it. And then one day she came in and I could tell that she was really just, kind of like a deer in the headlights kind of look. She was just staring off, not really engaging very well. And when I analyzed her spine, I found the very top bone in her neck, called the atlas, was significantly out of balance. It had shifted. And I know from my studies in neurology that when your atlas shifts, it immediately affects blood flow to your brain and electrical conductivity at your brain stem. And if you think about your nervous system as the electrical system or wiring system of the body, And your brain is the master power generator, sending power through that nervous system. So your spinal cord is like the main power line coming into your body or into your house. And when that power line first comes to your house, the first place it goes is a fuse box that distributes the wires to all the different parts of the house that need the power. Well, in your body, your spine is your fuse box. It's distributing the wires to all the different parts of the body that need the power. Now, on that fuse box is a main power switch coming in from the outside. And if you pull that down, it doesn't matter what the fuses are doing, it all goes down. Well, up top, that atlas is that main power switch. So if that's off significantly and you shift that power, it doesn't go well either way. So I see people develop a lot of physical ailments and a lot of mental ailments when that's off like that, right?
Really?
Yeah. So I did an adjustment. There's a special adjustment for that I did for that bone, and she left. The next day, she called me crying, and I thought that, okay, I knew she was depressed. And as we're talking, I started to realize that these are more tears of joy than they are of sadness.
Oh, yeah.
And she started telling me that when she stopped in my office, she was on her way to go home and kill herself. That she had all planned out, was ready to do it, and just knew that if she got a spinal adjustment and her nervous system was more in tune, that she would actually feel better moving on to the next level of existence in killing herself. Oh my God. So she was actually doing this in preparation to kill herself.
What?
But when I set her atlas appropriately, she said, by the time I got home, my entire mental state had changed.
Oh.
Colors looked brighter, smells were sweeter, I could hear better. I was back in connection with life again. Oh. And that bad blowout of her atlas had disconnected her from the mental and the physical, from the physical and the spiritual. Because if you're getting ready to kill yourself, you've given up your spirit.
Yeah.
Right? So that really brought it back to me about how powerful the neurology is and how powerful a chiropractic adjustment can be to restore the neurology and psychology connection. Right. And of course, I see people all the time with the hormone end of it. Funny story with that one. And I may have told you this before, but I remember early on in my practice, my wife, who was a teacher, had quit teaching for a while to work in the office and help me get it off the ground because, we didn't know. We moved to a different part of the country. We didn't know anybody. We went all in and I couldn't afford to hire staff. Right. So she's working in the office with me. And shortly after we're open, we started getting really busy and it was an evening and the waiting room was full. And this woman comes running in and runs up to the front desk and says, Dr. Mike got me pregnant. Dr. Mike got me pregnant. So my wife looks at me and goes, really? Right. And everyone called me Dr. Mike because we're a community, right? I don't wear the white coat in the office. I don't put a barrier up between myself and that person. I think that's really hurtful to the healing environment. I get down on everyone else's level and they're on my level and we talk, we're friends, right? So everyone calls me Dr. Mike. So she said, Dr. Mike got me pregnant. And I said, let me explain that. Okay. And what she was talking about was that she had been told for 10 years that there was no way she could get pregnant, that her hormones were so badly out of balance that she was in forced menopause and she was in her 30s. And they said, it's just no deal for you. Your ovaries have turned to raisins. You're not producing the hormones. You can't get pregnant. Yet when I gave her enough adjustments, her neurology affected her endocrinology. So her hormones started to kick back in. Her ovaries started to produce again, and she got pregnant. Which was pretty exciting for everybody. Yeah. Right. And then I went on to take care of that baby through its entire life. And then that baby grew up and got married and now brings her baby to me.
Oh, what a great story.
It's cool to see people through their generations, but it sure does make me feel old.
Yeah.
Right?
It's true. But that's fantastic.
But that was good. So I'm just trying to explain with my firsthand knowledge how this all connects. Okay. Now, another thing I thought was really, really interesting about the understanding of the psychology and the physiology. When I first got out of school, before I moved down to Virginia, I practiced in Manhattan. And in Manhattan, I had a patient with multiple personalities. And when that person would come in, I'd have to look and see who signed in to know who I was talking to. Because if you address that person with the wrong name, they could get a little unstable, right? And so I always look and see. And then I realized that one of these personalities on their intake form, we had different history intake forms for each personality, said that that person was diabetic, yet the other personality was not. So I ran blood work on each personality, and one was fully diabetic and the other was not. And it would change from day to day. So that person's psychology could turn on or off their diabetes.
What?
So again, I was dramatically impressed with how strong the psychoneuroendocrinology actually is. And this is studied mainly by PhDs and people in laboratories with journals, but I was getting to see it firsthand in practice.
Wow.
So I started to understand the power of working with each of these things to help the others. Now, there's one more word that you can connect to that long word, which is immunology. And psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology, because all of these things also directly influence your immune function. Okay, very important nowadays.
Right.
So if you learn to balance the body, you can balance the mind, and you can balance the immune system, and it all works together. Okay, so what are some ways that you can actually do this? Well, we've all heard about the gut-brain connection, right? And we were talking about that parasympathetic nervous system for healing and repair. So when we have the mind, body, and gut-brain connection going on, what's really going on there? Well, we know that what we think dramatically influences our digestive system and the balance of our microbiome, because our neurochemistry changes and makes that microbiome in the gut either hospitable or inhospitable to a certain balance.
Sorry.
That's okay. Welcome back.
I don't know what happened.
That's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
That's all right.
They're just here to listen to you anyway. But
I tend to droll on and on. So, interrupt me at any time. And if you want to redirect, because I'll just talk.
I don't even know how to redirect today. I'm just taking it all in. Okay, go ahead.
So the gut-brain connection. So, and we've talked a little bit about this in some previous episodes, I believe, but the gut plays a much larger role in your biochemistry and your neurochemistry than we ever realized. Mm-hmm. So we've recently discovered that, let's talk about that serotonin again. And you probably heard of serotonin, right? And most of our antidepressant drugs are called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, things like Wellbutrin, okay? And what that drug does is try to keep more serotonin, or happy hormone, in your brain. And the way it does that is it keeps recycling the serotonin instead of allowing the body to break down the old serotonin and fill it up with new. It just keeps the old stuff recycling longer, because the belief there is that you're not making enough serotonin. So if the old goes out, not enough new will come in. So let's just keep the old going longer. And that can work for a little period of time, but that's like saying, let me just keep changing the oil filter in my car, but never really change the oil. All right, let's just keep recycling it and see how long we can get it to last. Well, that's going to go for a little while, but eventually it's going to break down, right? So you're going to need new serotonin at some point. So where do you get serotonin from the brain? Well, 90% of the serotonin in your brain is made in your gut, okay? So the health of your digestive system determines how much serotonin you're actually making. So extremely important. That's why when I work with folks, and we've talked about this before, I have something I call the cellular healing cycle with 5 steps. The first step is controlling inflammation, because that controls all of this as well. And the second step is foundation. And foundation relates to cellular energy, and digestion is a real big part of that, because if you're not digesting and absorbing your nutrients properly, your cells don't have energy, right?
Yep. And Michael, how do you know if that's the case with whether or not your digestion is working properly?
Well, there's some really simple tests you can do to find out how they're working. Of course, many people have symptoms, but many people don't. Okay. So a lot of people have symptoms that don't relate to their digestive system. Like they might have acne, or they might have rashes, or they might have chronic headaches. Okay. Just to name a few. Okay. All right. And these are all directly related to your digestive system, but you may not realize it because you don't have a GI pain, right? You don't have a rumbly in the tumbly, okay? But you can do very simple tests. I actually did one on myself this morning. Every now and then, I do a full workup on myself. So today I did finger prick blood tests, I did stool tests, and I had 14 vials of blood taken, right? Because I want to do a real big look at a full wellness and immune panel and look at all the aspects of how things are working. That stool test can tell us what your microbiome is made up of, what critters are living in there. Because that microbiome, who's living there, determines what nutrients you actually absorb from the food you're eating. So you and I can eat the exact same meal and get completely different nutrients out of it based on who's living in my gut to break it down and absorb it, right?
Okay.
So we have a healthy balance and we have unhealthy balance. When we have a healthy balance, when we absorb those nutrients, they then get converted into certain things such as serotonin.
Okay.
Now, if I don't have a good balance there, that's going to lead to a problem. And there are certain bacteria that must be present for that to work well. And we've also learned recently through recent research in just the last couple of years, there are certain bacteria that if you introduce them to the gut can really, in the form of probiotics, particular strains, can really decrease depression and decrease anxiety because you're helping that balance. You're producing more serotonin. So I do special testing to see what your balance is, who's living there, and see what you need to replenish, what you need to upregulate, what you need to downregulate. And then I help you do that through dietary measures because what you eat makes a difference. Certain foods will produce different bacterial balances. Okay. And we also may recommend a specific probiotic strain that we introduce to your gut, or a prebiotic, which is various fibers that enable certain bacteria, probiotics to grow. Right.
So just going and getting a probiotic from the drugstore isn't necessarily going to work. Is that what I'm
Not
hearing from
necessarily.
you?
Right.
Okay.
That's a very shotgun approach to something that might require a sniper rifle.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So that could be helpful, probably not hurtful, but it may or may not be the answer.
Okay. So
Okay.
if somebody does that and they're not seeing results, they should investigate further.
Exactly. I think that's a great idea because I always say,
Okay.
I'm always thinking monetarily as well, go from cheaper to more expensive, go from easier to more complex, right?
But this
So,
is actually analyzing what you need. So you're not, it isn't
right.
about money. It's about what your particular body needs.
Exactly. I mean, that's how I feel, but I try to be cognizant of people's wallets as well. But
Sure.
we're
Yeah.
talking a couple of $100 that could change your life.
Yeah. Okay.
Really, that's what it is. Or you can continue to spend a lot of money on a lot of probiotics and supplements and keep wondering, why the hell am I not better?
Yeah. Of
Right.
course.
Or
Yeah.
on drugs or on herbs like St. John's wort, which have natural antidepressant properties. But again, they're not fixing the fundamental problems. They're actually causing that. Right.
Yeah.
And that's always been my pet peeve. I'm tired of people using Band-Aids, whether they be pharmaceutical or, holistically oriented herbs. It still may be a Band-Aid if you're not doing it for the purpose of fixing an underlying root cause fundamental problem.
Yeah.
Right? They may be a helpful crutch for a short period of time, but don't stop there. Find out what's going on and fix it. Don't guess, test. Right? See what's happening, because once you find and fix it, now you're really better.
Yeah.
Right? So you can do testing and find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You can also help that gut-brain connection by using something called a vagus nerve stimulator. Okay? So we talked before about that sympathetic and parasympathetic system. And we talked about how the parasympathetic was the rest and repair system and healing and digestive system. Now, the physical part of your nervous system that controls that, the physical part of your nervous system that activates that parasympathetic healing, resting and repairing, anti-anxiety, antidepressant system in your body is called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve, there's actually two. They run down either side of your neck, along the sides of your spine, directly from your brain down to every major organ in your body. But we refer to it as one. We call it the vagus nerve. Okay? And that vagus nerve connects to your heart, your lungs, your diaphragm, your spleen, your pancreas, your stomach, your small intestine, your large intestine, your liver, all those major organs, because they're all involved in either fight or flight or rest and repair. And we need to do things like slow down the heart, bring down the blood pressure, upregulate detoxification, upregulate digestion, absorb the nutrients, get the food into the cells. So the parasympathetic turns all that on. So what would you do if you had a tool that could actually turn that on at will? Is that something you'd want to use?
Of course.
Right? So that's called a TVNS, or transcutaneous vagus nerve stimulator. Now, in the medical arena, most of the research has been done on a subcutaneous vagus nerve stimulator, which means under the skin. So just like a pacemaker can be put in your chest and wires go into your heart to regulate with electrical current the rhythm of your heart, a subcutaneous vagus nerve stimulator wraps right around the vagus nerve in your neck like a coil. And just like a pacemaker, it's under your skin and stimulates an electrical charge to activate that healing repair. And the one medical condition that was approved for is depression. Okay? Because when you activate that vagus nerve, you immediately change the biochemistry and the neurochemistry that deactivates depression. But what we have found through research and study is that you can do the same thing almost as well, like 90% as good, from outside your body without a $100,000 operation and something inside your body, by using something that clips onto your ear. So the vagus nerve has branches that come out in your earlobe, back here in the bottom part of your ear and back of your ear, called the pinnae. And these areas can be stimulated by a specific frequency in a particular wave pattern that activates that vagus nerve with just a little electrical charge. It feels like a little buzz, right? And so in my office, I use this in part of my biohack zone. And again, biohacking is using scientific shortcuts to rapidly improve the health and performance of the body. So here's a perfect example of that. And when you're in my office on a hydro massage table, getting a jacuzzi relaxation with psychoacoustic headsets on to relax your mind, I also have this on here to activate your vagus nerve and turn on that healing response. Wow. So in 15 minutes, you've gone to a deep relaxation healing state. Now you can also use that tool at home. And as a matter of fact, it's best used for about 15 minutes, about 3 times a day. And so you can buy these. There are certain companies that manufacture these. The average vagus nerve stimulator for use at home runs about $500 or $600. But being the kind of inquisitive and kind of frugal guy I am, I figured out how to build them. So I build them myself by piecing together different pieces of equipment, and they work exactly the same. And I could build it for $150.
Really?
Yep. So those are the ones I use in my office, the ones I built, and those are the ones that I sell to people, my patients, or anyone who's interested. So if anyone would like to get one of those, they can contact me, and I can build them one and mail it to them for $150 versus $500 or $600 versus a $50,000 to $100,000 implant.
Wow.
Okay. So, and it's not just for depression or anxiety, but it helps digestion. It helps your heart. It lowers blood pressure. Think about anything that helps heal. That's what it does. So I use that for my patients with diabetes, my patients with cancer, my patients with heart disease, dementia, because it's activating the rest, repair, healing, and digestive modes of the body. Who couldn't that help?
Right.
Right? That's good for everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
You know? So that's something that I think that is something that's very much in your control that most people don't know anything about. Now, I would not recommend trying to build one yourself unless you know what you're doing, right? But I could get one to you pretty easily.
Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in that.
All right.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't hurt to do prebiotics and probiotics. Okay. It'd certainly be a great idea to use a transcutaneous vagus nerve stimulator. And there's also certain herbs you can use that really help to modulate that stress response. And when you modulate that stress response, you start to kick down those anxious and depressed feelings and upregulate your happiness. And that family of herbs are called adaptogens because they help you adapt to stress. Mm-hmm. There's about 150 adaptogens, but some of the ones that are most well known are ashwagandha or withania. Okay. So these can be taken in a tincture form under your tongue, can be taken in a capsule form, and these really help to calm your body. Another thing that really helps to calm your body and works with this entire system as well is the endocannabinoid system, right? And we've all heard of cannabinoids or cannabis. So things like marijuana, right? A lot of people smoke marijuana because they want to chill out, right? They want to calm down. Very rarely do you see a bunch of guys smoking marijuana in a bar and then a bar fight breaks out, doesn't happen. A hug fest might break out, right? So we know that certain things called cannabinoids affect a system that is inherent in our body called the endocannabinoid system. That is an intrinsic part of how our nervous system regulates our stress response and keeps us happy, satisfied, and calm. And we have receptors for that through our entire body, over all of our skin, through our entire nervous system, and through our entire digestive system. And they all connect. So when you stimulate the cannabinoid system through your skin, you help your digestive and brain and nervous system. If you take it internally, you help them all as well. Okay? So certain ones help in different ways and faster. So something called CBD, which you're probably familiar with.
Well, I was going to ask you about the CBD. Yes.
Right? And CBD has become extremely popular lately. Yeah. And the reason for that is because of the acceptance of medical marijuana and the acceptance of just marijuana in general throughout states now, where it's becoming legal, right?
Yeah, it's legal. It's legal here in Massachusetts.
Right. And it's legal here now in Virginia too, right?
Is it? I didn't think I knew that.
Yep. Just recently legalized back in July.
Okay.
Okay. Now, when people are smoking marijuana, they're trying to get a couple things from that, right? The main thing they're thinking about is THC, right?
Yes.
Which is the portion of the cannabinoid plant or cannabis plant that causes the high feeling, right? Mm-hmm. It's also the part that causes the paranoid feeling if you get the wrong batch, right? It's also the part that gives you the munchies and makes you want to eat more. So medically, it was traditionally used for people who are going through cancer therapy on chemo who had lost their appetite and were starting to waste away because they would not eat. But when they smoked marijuana, their appetite would go right back up and they want to eat. So that's certainly a positive, right?
Sure, yeah.
Now, what most people don't realize is that the cannabis family has different plants in it. We have the marijuana plant and we have the hemp plant.
Yes.
The marijuana plant is very high in THC that gets you high, but very low in CBD. So when you smoke marijuana, you're getting a little CBD, so a little bit of this anti-anxiety feeling, a little bit of this anti-inflammatory effect, but not nearly as much as if you got it extracted from the other side of the family, which is the hemp, right? And the hemp is very high in CBD, very low in THC. So it won't get you high at all. You can smoke as much as you want of it. It's not going to happen, all right? But you will get a lot of CBD, which is first and foremost anti-inflammatory. Mm-hmm. So it helps to rebalance your hormones, right? And it produces a calm anti-anxiety and antidepressant effect, and in very low doses to get that effect. So CBD comes in many different forms. There is something called full spectrum, which has every aspect of the plant as you would find it in nature. So there is a little bit of THC in there. It's 0.3% is a legal amount. And again, that will never get you high, no matter how much you take, but it will show up on a blood test. So if you get drug tested for work, that would show up. Much like if you eat a poppy bagel, you'll show up for opioids, okay? So with that in mind, they developed something called broad spectrum, which is everything in the plant, but pulling out just the THC. So that's been removed, so you can still get the full CBD effect, and the CBD works best with all the other cofactors the way nature intended it to be, terpenes and flavonoids and other cofactors. And the last form is called CBD isolate, which means they get rid of the entire rest of the plant and only leave the CBD. That's the least effective form because you don't have all the other components. So I always recommend broad spectrum or full spectrum. And if you're not getting drug tested, I recommend full spectrum. It does work a little bit better. Okay. But broad spectrum still works really, really well.
And how is CBD regulated?
So it's something that's being determined right now. So it's not being fully regulated yet, completely under the FDA. So there are a lot of companies out there with CBD-based products, and some are fantastic and some are utter crap.
That's what I was wondering.
Right? So there are a number of companies that I like to recommend because I've gotten on the phone, I've spoken directly with the presidents of the company, I've requested their data, I've seen the laboratory analysis, I see how they grow it, and it's very important for a CBD-based product. You want it to be grown organically, or at least where it says no pesticides or herbicides, because the hemp plant is a giant sponge. It'll soak up everything out of the soil. You don't want to be ingesting all those pesticides and herbicides. You don't want that. you're kind of defeating the purpose.
Yeah.
So organic, or at least pesticide and herbicide free. You also want extracted a certain way. You want the plant dried a certain way. You want the CBD concentrated a certain way, because in the way they grow the strains and the way they extract it, you can modulate the amounts of the cannabinoids. There are 114 different cannabinoids. CBD is one of them. Okay? There's CBG, CBA, CBM, CBN, CBD. These all have different effects on the body. They're all anti-inflammatory to a certain degree, but they have different effects. CBG is particularly good for allergies. CBN is particularly good to help you sleep. So I might recommend a CBD formula with more CBG or with more CBN. But if we're really just trying to reduce anxiety and depression, CBD is where it's at. But you don't need a whole lot for that. So the dosing determines the physiological effect on the body as well. And that becomes a little tricky because it becomes difficult to compare apples to apples because you have different bottle sizes. So when someone says, oh, it's a 250 milligram bottle of CBD. Well, if that bottle is 4 ounces, or if that bottle is 1 ounce, that's a very different concentration of that 250 milligrams in that bottle, because that number represents what's in the entire bottle.
Right.
Okay. So I tell everybody, don't go by the bottle dosing. Flip it over, read the actual label, and look at the per dose amount. Okay. How much am I getting per dose? So for an antidepressant, anti-anxiety effect, you want between 8 and 15 milligrams per dose. Okay. And with that, you might have to find your perfect dose. So it's easiest if you're feeling anxious. If you're having an anxiety attack, that's the best time to try this, because you can keep dosing yourself every 15 minutes until the anxiety stops. And you'll say, 3 doses. That's me. Okay. Now, if you're doing it just to prevent anxiety or depression, or you're not really having an active anxiety attack, that becomes a little bit more tricky because you have to play with that because you don't see that immediate response.
Yeah.
Right. But 8 to 15 milligrams for that intermediate level. Now, if you want to affect anxiety and depression and also alleviate pain, then you want more around a 20 to 25 milligram dose. Okay. And if you want to do all that plus reduce inflammation in your body and brain, you want a 30 to 35 milligram dose.
Okay.
Okay. And that's what I use, not because I'm in pain, not because I'm depressed, not because I'm anxious, but I want to reduce inflammation in my body and brain that I can't see or feel. I know the world I live in produces it. I know that inflammation causes all the chronic diseases. It kills everybody. Heart disease, diabetes, cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, and autoimmune dysfunction all relates to inflammation. So I use that on a regular basis to decrease my inflammation on a preventative measure.
Have you noticed a difference?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And
can you give me some examples?
Yeah, I'll get really personal with you for a second, because I don't tell too many people this.
Well, we're going to get real personal with a lot of people.
All right. So when my wife was going through the end stages of her cancer, and I was trying to do everything I could to help her, but I was learning how to help her. So I would study and research and travel and learn and come back and apply it. And, I was hoping I was doing the right thing. I didn't have a lot of time to test this out. Thank you, buddy.
Hi, is that Ralphie?
Getting kisses from Ralphie. He knows that this is a stressful thing for me to talk about, right?
I know. This is cool.
Towards the end, I was doing everything I could, and I was also not working a lot, and I was taking care of her, and I was suffering financially tremendously. And I realized I wasn't going to be able to hold out much longer and keep my practice going and support my family and do everything I could to save her. So I was extremely torn. And I started to drink too much. I started to eat crappy food because it made me feel good, right? If a friend said, hey, let me take you for a beer, I said, no, take me for 5. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Now, actually, I don't even drink beer, so it was cider or bourbon, right? Yeah. But in any case, in my book, I was drinking too much, right? That disrupts your gut lining. That disrupts your microbiome. That changes your neurochemistry. That makes you more depressed eventually. I started eating, I would always try to avoid sugar. I was like, give me the whole freaking chocolate cake and put a scoop of ice cream on top. Yeah. Because when I got that sugar high, I felt better.
Yeah.
right? Momentarily. And then it would come back to haunt me later because it would mess me up, right? Well, I got to the point where I realized I'm not going to have money to make it through this week. Can't feed my kids. Going to have to shut my practice. And my wife's dying right in front of me. And something snapped in my head. And I realized I've got $1.5 million life insurance policy. If I do it right, they'll be taken care of. And I planned it.
No way.
I planned it from a practical point of view.
No way.
And I got to the day before I was going to do it.
Really?
And,
wow.
I woke up that day and I said, what the hell am I doing? That's not the answer. That, again, is a momentary fix to help them through a rough patch. But how is she going to ever get any better than she is if I'm not there? How the kids are going to grow through life if I'm not there?
Yeah.
And so I know what it feels like to have depression.
Yeah.
I know what it feels like to be anxious. I got to the point where I felt like I wanted to crawl out of my own skin. I can't describe it. It was the most horrible feeling. I couldn't be in the car alone for more than 15 minutes. I had to be near someone that I loved. I got to the point where my wife was like, what the hell's wrong with you? Get away from me. Like, I just had to cling on to her for myself because I couldn't stand the anxiety I felt when I was apart. It got really, really weird. And along the same time, after she passed, which was not too long after that, I got really depressed.
Of course.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And even with little Ralphie here giving me lots of loving, he and I would sit in the house with the lights off all day. I would go to work, put on a happy face, get through my day. Even though I loved what I did, my brain was not in the right place.
No.
I got through my day. I would come home. Poor Ralphie would not even get walked. I would turn the lights off, sit on the couch, and I would not move and I would not sleep. And the next morning, I'd turn the lights on and go back to work.
He knew.
And I did that for a long time. I stopped sleeping. I became really, really anxious. And imagine when you're not sleeping, what that does to your brain.
Yep.
So I got to a point where I wasn't sleeping more than 2 or 3 hours a night for 8 months. I went for all kinds of testing and no one could figure out anything that was wrong with me. And I'm saying, I'm dying. I'm convinced I'm dying.
Yeah.
My muscles started to waste away and I lost 30 pounds in 1 month.
What?
I had not changed my diet. I hadn't done anything different other than even eat more fat producing foods. And I lost 30 pounds of muscle in 1 month. So I was pretty convinced that I had cancer.
Sure.
And I ran all these tests and it all came back negative. And again, my brain was in such a place that I really couldn't think clearly. I couldn't see my way out of my own box. And so I started turning to my friends and asking them to help me in certain protocols. And they would say, what are you talking about? You taught me that protocol. And I say, yeah, but I can't remember how to do it.
Wow.
My brain was not functioning. When you stop sleeping, your brain does not function. I got to the point where I couldn't remember my own nephew's names. It was insane. It really was. I thought I had Alzheimer's. I went through all kinds of stuff in my head, right? And then I got to the point where I had a separate functional medicine office and practice, which in this state, I could no longer run. I could not trust myself to do the right thing for people because I couldn't figure out how to fill out the test form to order a test because I couldn't figure out where to write my name. My staff was looking at me like I was insane because I was. It was anxiety and depression. And it was literally making me what I would consider insane because my brain was not working the way it was supposed to anymore. Yeah. Right? So I decided I had to close that practice. So I was packing it up and I'm pulling stuff off of my shelves and I pull off a bottle of CBD and I said, oh yeah, I give it to people with anxiety and depression, but I've never tried it myself. And I went, duh, holy crap. Let me start taking CBD. And that night I took CBD before I went to bed. And I am not kidding. I woke up, my eyes flashed open after I slept well, slept through the night. My eyes flashed open. And the first thing I saw was a complete metabolic breakdown of estrogen metabolism, all 57 steps. right? And I thought, that's bizarre. But my brain turned back on and was firing again. And within days, I was back to normal. And that was CBD that did that for me. So that was pretty dramatic.
I might need to order a bottle of this.
So I take that every day now, regardless. You know?
Wow.
So I've been doing that for years now.
Wow.
You know? So again, what you do, what you put in your body affects your physiology. Your physiology affects your psychology.
Okay.
Okay. So those are some things you can do. And I can recommend, if anyone wants to reach out to me, I can recommend the CBD companies I like to work with. I can tell you where to order online. I can send you a link, make it real easy for you.
I think we have a friend that you get CBD from, I believe.
Yeah. So I do get some here in town, right? At Mamie's Apothecary. And you can also order online from Mamie's Apothecary. And I also have some other sources I order directly from too. But some of my favorite ones, you can get right there through Mamie's Apothecary. So yeah, just tell people to do that. That's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
Right? That's MAMIES apothecary.com. And I know there's some regulations about what you can send through the mail. So they may or may not be able to, you might have to call the store to order that. You may not be able to do it online. I'm not sure. But if you're into any trouble, just let me know. Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting hot around the collar now after talking about all that.
I know. Really, I mean, thank you for sharing, because these stories, though emotional, I feel, can relate to people that are going through depression and anxiety. And when they see someone like you that seemingly has it all together and is healthy and passionate and intelligent, and once they start hearing your stories, I think it really makes you real. People like to, that you're relatable,
Yeah, no one's immune.
No.
No one's immune from stress, anxiety, depression. I have loved ones right now that are going through it that which makes me even more upset. They won't listen to me.
Yeah.
And it becomes hard because I understand when you're in that state, you can't hear.
Sure.
You can't process. It takes someone who cares about you, who hears it, and then helps you through it. Really. Just like me turning to my friends and asking them to coach me back through what I taught them.
And I'm so grateful that you grabbed that bottle of CBD, and I'm so grateful that you found your way back to us.
Me too.
I had no idea that things were that bad for you. I really didn't know.
Yeah, I don't share that with too many people.
No, well, now everyone knows.
Well, if that helps someone, then it was right to share.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you doing that. Really. Okay, so we're coming up on the hour. So let's. Is there anything else we want to add here?
Let's see.
So CBD was last.
Yep. So CBD, ashwagandha. There's other adaptogenic herbal blends that can work well.
Did we talk about any food?
So foods, and specifically, that is biologically specific.
Okay.
So if you're eating foods that are causing your body to be inflamed, that will lead to anxiety and depression for you. And the only way to really know that is through appropriate testing. And again, that's why I do the food sensitivity testing and the stool testing that I do, blood work and stool work, to look at what you can digest, what's stimulating your immune system negatively, because it could be things you would never imagine. You could be sensitive to organic broccoli or organic chicken, and that's causing a immune stimulatory effect that's throwing off your hormone balance and your neurotransmitters that can ultimately lead to what we're talking about tonight. So that's something that can guide people through as well.
Well, since we're sharing, when I wake up in the morning, my stomach's completely flat. And then like one bite of food and it's like bloats.
Right.
And so I know it's always been that way.
So yeah.
I need to get that.
Yeah, if you have that instant bloating like that, that's a very strong physiological reaction. And obviously that people don't have to have just that symptom to have a problem, but it's one of 100 things. that could happen. But
So
that is
just
something.
bloating.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's
obviously not supposed to happen.
right. So you could actually stop that
Yeah,
bloating.
yeah,
Is everybody hearing this? Because a lot of my friends, no, I mean, it's something a lot of my friends go through. And it's just, I mean, literally, I can, my stomach can expand from, my clothes fitting them to like not just literally in an hour.
right.
But every
Yeah.
morning it's flat.
So
So whatever is
that
happening
can
overnight makes it go away.
that can be one of a couple things. That could be a food sensitivity triggering that immune response, which creates a hormonal flux
Hmm.
immediately that causes changes in your fluid retention. That also
Hmm.
could be a microbiome imbalance. And if you get bloated when you eat, like you can't finish your meal, like, oh my God, I got to push away from the table, I'm getting bloated, or very quickly thereafter eating, you really get bloated. That's typically a sign of something called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that
Hmm.
means that your system is so out of balance that the bacteria that are supposed to live all the way down your colon have swam upstream, and they now are taking up residence in your small intestine, much closer to your stomach. And they digest differently than the ones that are supposed to be there. So when the food gets in, they instantly start producing gas and you bloat.
Yeah, I can eat. It's not, it isn't that. It's just,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
just
that's
get
probably more
bloated.
food sensitivity reaction then. That's an immune system reaction rather than a digestive reaction.
Okay.
So, but
All
yeah,
right.
we can test for that and we can correct for that.
Okay. So which tests are for that?
So two things I look at. The first thing I usually recommend for any digestive issue is the stool testing we do, which looks
Mhm.
at who's living there, right?
Yeah.
So that tells me what you can actually digest or not digest, because
Okay.
that could be the first part of the problem. And
Mhm.
we craft a very specific diet for you as an individual based on what you can digest well or not digest. The
Okay.
second part of that is a blood test that looks at, okay, once I've digested and it's gotten through my gut and is now in my bloodstream, and my white blood cells come and check it out and say, who are you? You just crossed the fence. Do I know you? Well, that's where
Interesting.
our immune system can get kicked in, right?
Okay.
And so if there's a problem with that part of the system, that will be picked up by our blood test, which is called a food sensitivity test. And
Mhm.
we do one that's the most advanced one you can do that looks at various factors that relate to an inflammation. Okay. A lot of people do food sensitivity tests they see online for like $99. Excuse me, for like $99. And that just does an IgG antibody test. That's extremely limited. You're missing a big piece of the puzzle if you just look at that. So I do recommend more of the full type of testing that looks at multiple antibodies, white blood cell reactions, the chemistry of inflammation, cytokines, leukotrienes, prostaglandins, all these things we need to look for an immune reaction. If you have
Okay.
that, then we craft a diet specific to you that does not create that immune reaction. And you avoid those foods for about 6 to 12 months. So we will test like 250 foods. We might say, stay away from these 50, only eat these 200. So it's quite a lot that you can eat from. But I want you to avoid the ones that are spilling fuel onto your fire.
Mhm.
And while you're avoiding them, I can now come in and work with a protocol of very specific digestive enzymes and herbs to heal your gut lining and fix that immune dysregulation and fix that microbiome balance. So after a period of time, 6 to 12 months, your body is completely back on track and you are healthy and normal again.
And have a flat stomach.
Yes, indeed. That's just one of the side benefits.
It's a problem. Hmm. All right, my friend. So let's see. We've got the ticker up here with Dr. Wildcanhelp.com. And what will we find when we go to your website?
So when you go to the website, drwildcanhelp.com, the first thing you're going to see is a big blue button that says schedule a free phone consult.
Mhm.
And if you have any questions at all, you want to know if what you're experiencing is something I might be able to help you with. And I have patients that I work with around the country because I do this virtually and there's a lot that we can do.
Mhm.
I'd be happy to talk with you. It's a completely free consult. You get to pick my brain for 15 minutes. We get to talk about what's going on with you and if I think I can help you, how I think I can help you. And then I'd make recommendations from there. So that's always the best place to start. You can read through the rest of that website. That is what I call my umbrella website. And that kind of gives you an overview of what I do and why I do it.
Yeah.
And then within that, it breaks it down to the different specialties that I have in my healing center here in Richmond, where I go into chiropractic care, functional medicine, and biohacking. And you can click on those and go to those individual websites and learn a lot more about those concepts if you would like to.
I love it. I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much for
I'm grateful to you.
sharing your knowledge and helping people. I know that every time I have you on Talks, you've helped someone. And I do. I talk to people all the time and they're like, we love the doctor. I love the doctor. Yes. So you've really helped a ton of people. And I appreciate you supporting the show. And being a regular means a lot.
Absolutely. I am thrilled that you give me this opportunity because most people don't want to hear me talking. My friends are just like, okay, shut up. But I can't, because it's just what I do.
No, yeah. And I just let you fly tonight because there was too many big words for me. I was like, I told you. I was like, but I learned a lot. So as everyone else did, I know.
Well,
you make me smarter. All right, my friend. I am going to sign off now, and I will see you next month. We'll have another topic.
Sounds good.
All right. drwildcanhelp.com. Go there.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed our episode tonight with Dr. Michael Wild. And again, if you would like more information or have a free consultation with him, you can go to his website. It's along the ticker here, drwildcanhelp.com. I really appreciate you tuning in with us, and we will see you next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. All righty. Bye.